Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the ninth round of the UCI Cyclocross World Cup in Zonhoven, and with me here to discuss all the action is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We are one day later than usual, but it was much needed. It was very poor conditions out there on the roads yesterday, and also today driving home from Belgium closed up the Eurocross Academy trip where I was working for the video department, which consisted of me, myself, and I was doing a little bit of coaching there as well. So really a nice day out yesterday. Issam, Zonhoven, my favorite race on the calendar. According to the organizers, 20,000 fans in the venue, and I would believe it, the Kuil is always full, and today was no different. Maybe we could have been 28,000 people if Van Aert was there, but he was only there on a video screen. What a day. The Kuil is just the best venue. It's the best place in cross. Like, this is our Madison Square Garden. This is our Camp Nou. This is our place. This is our Wimbledon. This is the center court. This is just the best place for cyclocross. The atmosphere, the downhills, the carnage there. I mean, you would have certainly enjoyed it, Issam, because, yeah, the TV directors, I don't know what they were like yesterday in Zonhoven, but throughout the Christmas period, you couldn't really see all too much of what went on behind, but throughout the entire day, nice sun out, wintry conditions, very beautiful winter day, and in the Kuil I could see all the action, big screens to follow the front, but just look left or right and there's always riders coming down, and you see some very interesting battles for places further down in the top 10.
I can recall from the years that we've been talking about Zonhoven, just truly became a true classic in a sense, and yeah, it's definitely up there for me as well as one of the my favorite race of the season. It's definitely a race where you look forward to. The Kuil, it's iconic at this point, and I'll leave the comparisons to you, but I for sure enjoyed the racing, and it's, the circumstances definitely made it also, I guess, a little bit more interesting, and overall just the people there, the Kuil, it makes it so exciting to watch. I think that most viewers also enjoyed it watching it on TV. The directors were all right, so I won't give them that much slack. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It's just definitely a race that you kind of circle with red on the calendar, and you're really anticipating it. You're really waiting for it, and when it happens, it always somewhat delivers, even if the racing is somewhat boring.
Well, the men's racing might have been boring, but that's why we are going to start by discussing the women's racing, because that certainly wasn't boring. Already in the first lap we had carnage in the Kuil. Race leader Puk Pietersen going down. A few seconds later, the new race leader Lucinda Brandt went down. Then Alvarado took the race lead at the bottom, but couldn't avoid the bike of Brandt and also went down. Absolute cinema there. And you were kind of waiting for this battle. Pietersen seemed to be eager, ready to go, but she couldn't put it together on the snowy course. Too many mistakes, not just in the Kuil. There were, throughout the rest of the course, also a number of mistakes, a few crashes, definitely some icy patches there. The Kuil, that was snow clear, the sun was on it, but the rest of the course was covered in a bit of snow, and there were a few ice patches which called out a number of riders. We'll talk about Thibaut Nys later in the men's part, but yeah, Peter said too many mistakes. It looked that we were headed towards another win for Lucinda Brandt. She broke clear somewhere in the second lap, opened a 20-second gap. But with the penultimate lap in the first descent of the Kuil, she made it through the sand, no problem. But then the left-hander that was covered in snow, because that was fully in the shade all day, she slid away with the front wheel, went down. Her lead evaporated. It melted like snow in front of the sun. Alvarado came back. In the final lap, Brandt made a push, but Alvarado just had that little bit more. That belief was in Alvarado. You could see it in her, the way she was riding. She really started to believe and knew that this was her opportunity. She powered away, took the win, and it is possible, Issam. It is possible to beat Lucinda Brandt, but what's necessary for it is almost absurd. One, you need to be flawless yourself. Alvarado, I don't blame her at all for that crash in the first lap. First, she needs to take avoiding action on Pietersen, then Brandt goes down. She needs to take avoiding action again, but then there's just a bike in the way. That's not really a mistake, that's just unlucky. The rest of the race, flawless execution, and even then, you need Lucinda Brandt to not be as flawless as she's been throughout the entirety of the season. Brandt, just a few mistakes, and it cost her it was a nice race with a nice swing at the end, because in the middle part we were thinking, it's another win for Brandt, but Alvarado, she got handed an opportunity and she really took it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this race, I would say, almost made up for the entirety of the season on the women's side, where we had to watch, basically Brandt dominating most of the races, or all the races where she has taken part in. And, you see the circumstances, you see the course, Zonhoven is tricky. You got this feeling of, if it would be, someone that is going to make Brandt's life difficult, it was probably going to be Pietersen before the race. In the race, as you said, Pietersen was making too many mistakes and was not getting through the course that well. Brandt was struggling, but it was all right. And Alvarado was, as you said, she was always fighting, even at times where you were thinking, she's not really in the race to that extent. But then she tried to keep that gap as close as possible, and she tried to stay in it as much as she could. And it's basically, she got rewarded, I guess, in a sense, for keep on trying and keep on pushing. And Brandt, made the crucial mistakes, and especially the last one was definitely, that just cost her too much. You could really see that was just she really saw that the gap was just a bit too big, and Alvarado was pushing very hard and was able to keep that gap and enjoy that gap in a sense, and take the victory. And you could see that it meant a lot. Very emotional after the race, and very understandably emotional, because it has not been this season for Alvarado. Really struggling in a sense. Has shown some okay performances overall this season, but really be struggling, trouble with the back. And, this is definitely a race where you can take a lot of positives if you are Alvarado. If you are Brandt, you look at this race and you're like, I could have won it, because she was definitely looking like she was the strongest. There were definitely moments in the race where I was thinking Brandt will win this. But every time something happened. And that's definitely not how you have to get through a race if you want to win it, especially when you get these circumstances. One thing that we have to keep in mind is, in a sense, this is definitely not the type of racing that we will see in the next coming weeks. You could argue that maybe in Hulst you will find some elements of Zonhoven that we will also see in Hulst. It could be tricky. That, could maybe play a role, and that could, work against Brandt in a sense. We have to understand that, the order is still somewhat respected. Only today, due to circumstances, due to the mistakes of Brandt, there was Alvarado. And it was, it was great to see that there was a battle, that we were seeing a fight for victory. And it's been a while. So, I was happy to see it all unfold, and I was happy to see Alvarado win. And I was also kind of happy that Brandt did not hurt herself all too bad in the crashes overall, and the same goes for Pietersen also.
It's refreshing. How many wins in a row for Brandt did we have? Since the European Championship, she won everything. I think we were over 10 wins in a row. And then it's always nice to see that streak being ended. Not because Brandt is an unlikable rider or doesn't deserve it, but we all, or at least I think most people, watch cyclocross for the battles, for the tension, and when that's not really there, it's easy to get bored. And yesterday definitely had a good element of surprise and drama and intrigueness to it. I thought what was telling in the final lap was Alvarado had a gap, and I was in the curl, and she took so much risk, Brandt that is, so much risk. Like the lap after that crash didn't really bother her. She took so many risks in the downhill and through that corner. And then on the short run-up after the bridge, which was added so spectator flow was much better, she closed that gap. But at that point she was gassed, because where did she get dropped before? She lost the time on the climb. And then towards the second time of the call, you again need to go all the way up that hill. She again didn't really have what it took to match Alvarado. So I think for Alvarado there's positives to be taken from this, but I don't mean to glaze Brandt too much, even though she's finishing second here. But just, again, what is needed to beat Brandt is so much that it's very difficult, but it is possible. And that, I think, should be the main takeaway from here. But we're in the point where everything means something for the championships that are coming up, and mainly the one where the rainbow jersey is on offer, right? But my takeaway kind of here is like everyone will have had some positive results here throughout the Christmas period, but the best riders that are headed towards those championships, the best are the ones that have consistently been able to perform very well, that are getting the good results race in, race out. They don't have a results chart which looks like a mountain stage in the Tour de France. It looks like a flat profile. There's a few small dips, maybe a DNF, maybe one bad day, but overall it's very consistent and smooth. And Alvarado definitely ends her Christmas period on a high feeling, just like she started it. It seems forever ago, Issam, but Antwerp, that was where she really managed to put a foot between the door and really challenge Brandt more than we've really seen this season, with the exception of the races she lost. And she also ends it that way. She ends it with a win in Mol without Brandt, and also with a win here in Zonhoven, where Brandt was present. And then, I mean, this shouldn't become the preview, but at this point, Alvarado seems to be maybe the contender. Of course, Pieterse should also be mentioned, but my thing with Pieterse is this: technically she's very good. The sand was definitely an issue. I mean, the sand in Zonhoven is something special. She struggled with that. She didn't seem nearly as confident as the others going down lap in, lap out. But her riding style technically is not consistent enough, because today is just one example, but remember, for instance, Maas Mechelen last year on that off-camber when she was in the lead. Technically, she's good, but there's always like one or two moments in a race where she kind of turns off, and that technical ability just seems to float away. She makes a mistake, and it ends up costing her dearly. So, if you need perfection to come close to Brandt, I would hope that if Pieterse has one day of perfection, it's the World Championships. But it's just difficult because her style the last few years has been good technically, and if she really gets it together, she was the rider able to beat Van Empel a few years ago. I remember a battle in Overijse. I remember a race in Hulst. I remember also a good day in Gave, which might not have resulted in the win, but there are just these outings where she is able to get it together, and then it's really, really good. But there's too many days for me still for my liking, like in Zonhoven, where technically she is good when she's riding, but there's just, like I said, these moments that kind of ruin everything.
It's difficult to judge in a way, but I think that if you purely look at the form and you try to find an order in that, you would definitely say that Brandt is currently still the best. And I would argue that Pieterse is maybe a little better than Alvarado, actually. You cannot make use of that if you are going to make that many mistakes. And it's as you said, technically she has skills. She's not like, but it's at times that she has to tidy it up a little bit, and she has to kind of try and find a way to at least lessen the mistakes and try to find a way to tidy it up and make it, be more consistent over the course of a lap. And I think then there is maybe something possible in the next coming weeks, and also for the World Championships. As you said, we should not make a preview out of it, but we almost are forced to, in a sense, because, we have to look at these circumstances right now and, make something out of it. But at the end of it, we also have to recognize, in a sense, that if it wasn't for the circumstances, if it wasn't for Zonhoven and the Cal, and overall also the crash of Brandt overall, the main one where she had that crash after the first downhill in the Cal, that one, I think, arguably that one cost her the most, because that kind of brought Alvarado back in the race overall for victory. But you just look at her fighting spirit, Brandt is not going to be easy to beat, because she has the confidence in a way. Even if the Cal passages were not amazing, but at least the confidence is there. It didn't look all too pretty at times, but she's doing it, and she's doing it rather fast as well. So she is very tough to beat, and we have seen that this season so far. Things just have to kind of not go her way, and then there is a chance for Alvarado, and there is a chance for Pieterse. Pieterse for sure, if she has to clean it up a little bit, and with Alvarado she has to get better. If it wasn't for that silly mistake, in a sense, because that mistake just before the second dive of the Cal, I think that one was definitely a bit unnecessary. That shouldn't have been made. arguably you could say that if, after that passage, normally Brandt was not going to lose that race. But because of that mistake, in a sense, and the gap there, it's going to hurt you, and Alvarado is not going to give that away. It's going to be interesting to see how much the gap will be in the next coming weekends. And come the World Championships, we will see if Brandt is going to be able to, I guess, in a sense, reward herself for this, what has been so far an incredible season.
Alvarado and Brandt are not far off the level of Brandt, though. They don't need that big of an improvement. So I'm still optimistic that things can change with, the training camps to Spain and the World Championship build-up and the seasonal planning of them. Both started relatively late due to different reasons, but still, they started relatively late. They're building up differently. So hopefully that will kind of change the way that we're looking at the racing come the World Championships. But to go back to my point and the point about the cleaning up, if you look at the way that the top riders race, they most of the time race at 90% of their ability. They don't take every corner cutthroat. They're in just a comfortable range. If you're always at the maximum of your ability, you crash a lot. That was Brandt early in her career. She was overcompensating for a lack of technical abilities, and as a result, for instance, she lost a medal at the World Championships in BLS, or she might have still come third there, but she crashed. She wiped out on that big downhill, and I think that, if I recall correctly, in BLS, she didn't finish on the podium. She was fourth. I think it was Nash or maybe Majerus who came onto the podium, but that's what I recall from the top of my head at least. So you need to be steady, because the more risk you take, if you're taking every corner at 100% of your ability, there will inevitably be crashes. So then it's important to just stay within your own, and especially the Kuil. It's not really criticism of Peters, but more a remark in general. The Kuil, it's a fantastic feature, but it's not where the race is won. But it is where the race can be lost. You don't gain that much if you send it down the Kuil. 1, maybe a second and a half. If you're very lucky, 2 seconds. It's just not that long, and the difference at such a speed is just, it needs to be tremendous to really make a difference. So the difference in Zonhoven is made by staying on your bike in those technically challenging sections, but with the new layout, the elevation in the course is quite heavy. You have a lot of climbing to do from the level of the start finish to the Kuil. So that's really where the legs are drained. And I mean, take for instance Amandine Foucounet. She was not going down that Kuil comfortably. She was not taking risks. She was really slow. I mean, compared to the other riders in the top 10, she might have been the slowest. The only one I would want to say was slower going down was maybe Zemanova or Backstedt, but Backstedt kind of got more comfortable as the race progressed. But where did Foucounet finish? He finished fourth.
Bentveld.
Bentveld was iffy. Bentveld was iffy on some laps, but also some laps really sending it. There was no consistency really in what she was doing. She was kind of following the riders around her and definitely took a tumble or two, I think. But to Foucounet's point, like, she moved through that field quite nice. She kept something in the tank. She took her recovery on the longer downhills, really powered through on the climbs and rode to a fourth place, which is a solid placing. I mean, she never really challenged for the podium today, but that's also okay. This is a good performing by her. She raced in Gulligem the day before. It was cold there. That definitely takes a toll. So my point more is the Kuil, fantastic feature, and I love it there, but it's not necessarily where the race is won. But by going about it smartly and not taking too many risks there, you can really maximize your performance. Foucounet did that. Bentveld maybe to her extent didn't do it. She could have maybe gone iffy like in those laps instead of like sending it in those laps, in which she then went down. Who else? I mean, Fleur Morse, another rider going down very cautiously, but there were also riders that I saw crash a number of times. I mean, this was mainly Mary Schreiber, for instance. I saw her make a number of mistakes, and she could have definitely finished a lot higher, maybe 14th if it wasn't for those crashes. So that, I think, is a very important factor that is easily overlooked in the Kuil. Everyone thinks of that of the course, but it's not necessarily where the race is won. And again, like if we look at the entire top 10, Issam, Alvarado, Brandt, Pietersen, Foucounet, Van Anrooy, Van Alphen, Bentveld, Zemanova, Bakker, Backstedt, it really is the riders with the big engines coming to the forefront. Van Anrooy, Foucounet.
Yeah.
Backstedt 10th. Like, Backstedt moved through the field well. Why? Because at the end of the race, she had something left in the tank. Zemanova, we can call her a fast core specialist, but also one with an engine. And they are the ones coming to the forefront here in the top 10.
I totally agree. I think that the course, apart from the cow in a sense, there is much more to it. It's a course where if, when it's a bit, the surface is somewhat a little bit harder, you still have to kind of push through, and the bigger ranges always kind of have the upper hand in a sense in the racing. And I think that we saw that somewhat last year as well, and this year again it's kind of visible, because you saw it with Brandt. Despite the mistakes, she was still able to keep herself in the race. She could have won it if she didn't make that last mistake there on the last lap. Maybe in her mind she was thinking, I should now, second, that was the second dive I think of the cow, I should now try to focus and make sure that I don't make any mistakes. And you really pressure yourself. Heart rate is through the roof, especially for her, because she had to come back Alvarado, so she definitely had to push this race already. Came from a position in which you normally would say that's not gonna work, but she did so. And then you just have to kind of keep your it's easy to say, but you have to keep your head cool, and you need to be calm and collected and make sure that you negotiate the cow comfortably in a sense. If you just, I guess in a sense, stay calm, know your limits, don't do anything crazy, then you should normally be able to get to the bottom of it and continue on the racing. And then you can go back in a sense to, for example, for Fukuné, she can then go back into, the racing and using the engine and pushing through, and then you can make the difference on everyone that doesn't have that. As you said, I think that Fukuné definitely maximized, knew her limits in a sense. There was no way that she was going to be able to follow the three up front, and she rode like that in a sense. She knew, okay, I have to try and get the most out of it. And in my opinion, fourth was 100% maximizing the result, and she did that. So I think, you have to be kind of smart. Don't let yourself get too greedy, get too confident, think that you're all gonna do it. You need to know your limits, be humble in a sense, and then you get through the course quite well, and then a good result is definitely possible, because others are at times not that calm and collected.
It's just so intriguing that when you're at the bottom to just see these riders go down. And I would definitely say that I didn't see as much of this race on screen as I had hoped. I mean, I watched parts of it back today, but I was also working again today. So, for instance, that mistake by Brandt, you kind of totally miss it because you're just anticipating them coming together. You see on the screen, and then all of a sudden it's Alvarado alone. You don't really know what happened, but it's still an experience. You can really see a lot about the way that they come down there. So, yeah, I think from the top 10, Fukuné, we discussed her solid ride by her. Van Anrooy, I thought a pretty good ride. Maybe we had expected a little bit more at the start of the Christmas period following her good rides in Antwerp, Koksijde and Hofstade. But then, if you look at kind of her last race, Dendermonde, this was a good race again. She didn't have a great start, but moved through the field well. It's very easy to move through the field here. I don't know if the snow really helped her. It's difficult. There's not one thing as a snowcross, and for a snowcross, this was relatively grippy snow. It was packed. It had fallen the day before. It had frozen overnight. It was more slippery with the ice in some places, but it still adds just that little bit more than a grassy course. You need to just be a little bit more cautious. And Van Anrooy afterwards said that she was happy with the feeling on the bike because it was difficult for her to really get a good feeling, even though the results were good on the cross bike. She said it's kind of uncomfortable. I've not raced that much cross the last 2 winters, and I feared that would hold her performances back much more throughout the season. That didn't happen. So I think for Van Anrooy we can conclude certainly a positive Christmas period.
Yeah, and she ended it also quite positively. I think, if I can recall correctly, she made a comment after the race of Hofstade where she was kind of, I wouldn't say complaining, but she was feeling the races in a sense. After Dendermonde, she took some rest, and I think the rest did her good that period. At least in Zonhoven, it looked to be again a bit on the up, and that is definitely what you kind of need. It's in a sense weird because it's a race where you can have a very positive feeling that you can take with you into training camp in Spain or wherever you're going, and it can help in terms of mentally as well, and you can be in a positive vibe, and you don't know what that will help a little bit in a sense. And I think that it was good for Van Anrooy that she took some rest in the Christmas period. That is something that she is in a position in a sense that you can do that in a way, but you still have to make that decision. And at times you're like, I can maybe do another race, squeeze in another race, see how it goes. And that is, super dangerous, because that could be just that race too many, and it could go from bad to worse. And they did not do that. I think after Dendermonde, she took the signs quite well, and Zonhoven, we can see that it is on the up, so positive. And I think overall, if you look at her season, I think it's definitely a positive season. And if I can remember well, I was at least saying, and I think you were saying that as well, that we should not really put any expectations on the season overall, and there should not be any goals made before this, before the campaign. And I think that if you look at it now, she, in my opinion, if I had any expectations, definitely overperformed in a sense, and curious to see what that will bring for the next coming weeks, and also on the road. That will be interesting what that will mean, what that will bring. And yeah, I think overall very, very positive signs from Van Anrooy.
Van Alphen, good ride. She's raced a lot. Tiredness kicking in, but did well. For Bentveld, just another Magic Monday. Several crashes in the Kuil. It's, I don't really know what to make out of that one. Actually, I think what I'm looking for in terms of words is she should have taken more from her teammate Fukunen. Just not send it above your own ability, and then she could have potentially finished a bit higher, although the gap ahead was quite large. Zemanova, good ride, covered her plenty. Bakker as well, covered her in the episode of Mol. Backstedt, racing is probably taking a toll. First time you come in, maybe some freshness benefits, but again, for many riders, there will be some point for this Christmas period that they can take something from. Like for her, it will be her race in Loenhout, Baal. There's something there. But also, for Backstedt, you're looking at it and you know that wrist injury was there, and you're just thinking, is the next few weeks, that training camp, is that going to bring her to the level we know she can have? And will that be enough for the under 23 world title? Or are we going to potentially be in for Bentveld up there, Carrier up there, Géry up there, Muller up there? There is a pack of wolves coming for that title of Zoe Backstedt. Fleur Morse as well, she's been riding very strong recently. Issam, again, good course for her, but Fleur Morse, probably in Beringen, the favorite for the Belgian title, just outside of the top 10 there. A name that in Belgium is remaining under the radar. I didn't know it was possible, but it is. She's staying a little bit low this year, and it might just be her year. If Backstedt doesn't improve that much more, we're going to be in for a great battle there, hopefully at the Under 23 World Championships with several contenders.
Just keep it on the low. Keep it on the low.
Maybe just a few mentions from outside of the top 10. Just the same, what I said. Something to take away. Marie Schreiber, yeah, good race in Diegem. Didn't race since. Zonhoven, yeah, the worst race of the Christmas period other than Koksijde, where she pulled out of the race super early. But for her, up and down, mountain stage profile, that always worries me. A few of these riders manage to nail it and get into peak form, but for others, it's just hard. And then, one of the riders who went down the best in the Kuil, Issam, Annemarie Worst. I mean, I bet you didn't expect me to pull that name out of the hat today. I don't think we really discussed her at all. I mean, what a roller coaster season for her as well. She fractured her collarbone, then came in. I mean, the last few years have already been tough, but in recent years she was always there. She was always there to put her name into the top 5, get a podium here and there. And this year, boy, I was just looking at those results from the Christmas period. Antwerp, 41st. Koksijde, 28. Zolder, 13. Dendermonde, 17. Loenhout, 6. Zonhoven, 13. I mean, you could say that probably Zonhoven was her best race of the Christmas period, but boy, that is a rough season for Annemarie Worst.
It is, and it has its reasons, obviously, but it's kind of a lost season, I guess, because it's just like the preparation is very much hurt and with everything, and you kind of get into this season. You should not expect much, but you're going to push for it, and maybe in the beginning you can somewhat make use of the freshness, but then there are gonna be some races where you will feel doesn't really go your way, and you have to get into a certain rhythm again. Others are already quite seasoned into the season, and you're not really there yet. It is all kind of understandable. I hope that it will not cost their place in a sense, and I definitely think that I would say almost forgive her for the results in a sense, because it's just definitely not ideal the way she started the season, and it's just gonna be a sort of a roller coaster, and I don't think it's over yet. I think that there's still going to be some ups and downs here. There are gonna be more ups than downs, and the ups are gonna be good. That's kind of what you have to hope for, and then basically already think about how you're going to try and get better next year, because as I said, it's somewhat a lost season. It was ruined before you even could get started, and that's just very bad. You don't wish that to anyone, and it just kind of ruins the whole flow of it, and your whole campaign is kind of you're just in a disadvantage, and there's just not much you can do about it other than try to push and hope for the best.
You know, I always thought Annemarie Worst had one world title in her, and I know she's not retiring yet, but definitely in the last few years, it's not really gone her way. Lots of injuries, lots of bad luck, lots of adversity, and this year again, and maybe worse than ever, with the collarbone fracture at such a vital moment in the build-up. So it's sad, but if you had to ask me, the World Championship in Dubendorf was her best opportunity, and people were giving her shit for looking upset on the podium because she needed to smile, according to them. And there would be many more opportunities, but it just shows how cruel sport can be. She got another opportunity the next year, and she was barged over, shoulder to shoulder, last lap battle, kind of out of the hat. She hadn't shown that much that season, but pulled it out of the hat and delivered on the day in Ostende. Brand shoulder to shoulder, leans in with the shoulder, takes her out, and that was it. Like, those were her best opportunities and her only World Championship podiums. I mean, I say her only, but two of them is still, of course, good result once you reflect. But 30 years old this year, or last year, and going to be 31 this year, so the time for Worst, I mean, it's ticking. A few seasons ago, we said it would maybe be good for her to leave the Roodhoofd team and try and find a different environment, try and find different trainers. She did start working with a different trainer and started doing some other training practices, which did help her get a bit quicker, but it's still just a little bit sad. I felt a little bit sad seeing just that technical brilliance down there, which is how I remember her from when she won the Under 23 world title in BLS. That's the type of rider she's always been to me, but sadly, I would say that for injuries and crashes, just bad luck overall, we've seen Forst at her best for not as nearly as long as we would have deserved as cyclocross fans. Then, the men's race. Issam, what is there really to say? It looked like a repeat of last year. Last year, Van der Poel took the cull first, powered away. And this year, he took the start first because he was up there. Powered away. Toon Aerts, thank you for trying, but those 3 minutes were all he could do. And it's easy to see why. Van der Poel flew away. A double puncture couldn't stop him. Another puncture also couldn't stop him. He went on to take the win. Second place was a more interesting battle. It was quickly a group there, knowing that they raced for second. Thibaut Nys in the mix against Emile Verstringen. Niels van der Putten there for a while together. Also with Tibor Del Grosso. It was Del Grosso who eventually broke clear, but not after Thibaut Nys. He made a quite strong impression in the middle part of the race, took some initiative there, really started to shift that group. Aerts, for instance, got dropped. Van Toerenhout was distanced further, but Nys, he hit a patch of ice, went over the fences. His bar was broken. He ran to the pits, decided to finish the race. Wasn't to be for the podium anymore from there. Del Grosso was with Verstringen, but eventually managed to power away. I think within the battle for second, what made the difference was a combination of technical ability and a little bit physicality. Del Grosso maybe a little bit stronger physically, but mainly I felt he was stronger in the downhill section and through the corners, which gave him that physical advantage at the end of the race because he was able to be a little bit more conservative. But Van der Poel with the win, he's now going to take a 2-week break. Chances of him starting Benidorm are very, very low. He wants to do endurance-based training. Unless Flanders Classics pulled out 50, 60, maybe 80,000 euros out of a hat for him to start, he probably won't go there. So in that sense, he's doing us a little favor because the battle for the World Cup is on. Thibaut Nys has a realistic shot at winning, but for that he needs to win in Benidorm and then in the remaining races finish second and third. There is also a rider, Michael van Toerenhout, who still has a chance. He too would need to win Benidorm, and then he would need to finish second in both of the final races. Definitely a steep task for both of them to do, but I don't think Van der Poel is that bothered anymore. He really seemed to enjoy himself. Statement victory, demonstration, masterclass. Kind of out of superlatives here, but it was a great ride by him and nice battle for second.
I don't know what the reason exactly was for Van der Poel to do it a little bit differently than we have seen in most of the races this season. I think maybe he looked, he was watching the women's race and he thought, I need to be there at the front when I want to go down the first, take the first dive there in the cow. And I don't blame him, to be honest, because if one in front of you makes a mistake, we've seen it, it's very hard to kind of move away from the patch where you're in, and it's just very hard to get from left side to the right side or the other way around, so you risk crashing out yourself. So it is just, you want to be there in the lead. Hell of an effort to get there in the lead, and from there on we kind of knew what was going to happen, and it happened. And even the punctures were not going to be able to slow him down. It was the Van der Poel show, as we are kind of used to at this point. And a job well done again, and he's continuing on with his tournée, in a sense, of winning races. And what will happen in the next, he's probably not going to do Benidorm, then he's going to do that double of Maasmechelen and Hogerheide, and then the World Championships, and then we can see if he can do it on the most important day of the season, I guess, for him, because no World Championships is a failed season despite almost winning everything, or winning everything at this point. It was another masterclass. He showed how it had to be done, and behind it was, I would say, kind of interesting in a sense, up until Nys thought that it was a good idea to, he was maybe feeling himself a little bit too much. At least that is what he said in the post-race interviews, that he was maybe doing it over, I guess, in a sense, and being too confident, feeling, having a good moment, feeling good. And that is when those very slippery patches are hitting you, at your worst, in a sense, and you just don't expect it. And it was a spectacular crash. Thankfully for him that it was only the bike that really injured most of it, and he was able to get off that quite okay, relatively okay, not much hurt there. And that is kind of lucky call, because with the nationals coming up, that would have hurt him if he was not able to start there. So yeah, he was definitely in a strong moment. Del Grosso, we have seen it that he, apart from that mistake there before the U-turn, the downhill actually before the U-turn, it was an okay race from his side. Verstringen is still having, is still being able to use the legs that he has, in terms of he has a good form. And when you have that, and we said it already, Zonhoven is a race where you can show that in a way, especially if you have a good engine. Verstringen has a very good engine, and he showed that, and he was able to finish on the podium, and he definitely concludes this Christmas period, maybe also the season after the nationals, but this Christmas period very, very strongly, in my opinion, shows great form, and is, he put himself there as one of the favorites for the nationals as well in Beringen.
Good day for the Roodhoofd consortium, blocking out the top 4, Alpecin Premier Tech 1-3-4. Good day for that team. Del Grosso, a solid outing, Issam. don't really have too much to add about their performances. It's kind of, I think, what we have seen Van der Poel above the rest, then Del Grosso and Nijs, with Verstringen very, very close behind those three, really behind now that we're definitely counting out Van Aert, but he would have been in that ballpark. Van der Putte, Aerts, Van Toerenhout also strong, not too far off those guys, definitely within the range to force a challenge. Nieuwenhuis not as good since that knee injury, but that's really kind of the result. What it tells here is some of those top placings is kind of the trend that we have seen the last couple of weeks. This is the riders. Almost everyone was there. No real excuses. Nice, the only one really missing. I mean, Visura had a good outing here at the back end of the Christmas period, but for him, 3 days in a row, 2 days in the snow was probably a bit too much. The lights went out for him, and you can't really blame him for that. But if we're at the top here, Verstringen, Issam, I don't really understand the rumor that is fully going around, because the talk is that he's going to end his season after the Belgian Championships to focus on the road, because he is going to become one of the main drivers of the Alpecin Premier Tech team, and that they want him to be at his best for the Strade Bianchi because they want him to target a top 10 there in that race. Verstringen had a good tour, but what I don't really understand is why he starts his season so early then. Why do you start all the way in October? Not really using the same approach as the others for the spring classics. I mean, yes, Strade is earlier, but we've seen it done in the past. I mean, Van Aert also wanted to do that and potentially race Worlds. Verstringen is a podium contender at the World Championships. I mean, I just struggle to really understand that. I mean, for the Belgian Championships, Nijs and Verstringen are the two top favorites, closely followed by Aerts and Van Toerenhout. Van de Putte, it depends how much climbing they put in the course and how much they move to the lower parts. I still couldn't find a course map yet, but it should probably come out today. Also in the contention, then in the same region, Visura, but that's kind of how I look at the Belgian Championship. But at the World Championships, Verstringen is a contender. The only thing I can really say, if he's not going to go, that Belgian selection, I mean, it's looking thin. If he doesn't go, there's no Van Aert, no Verstringen, no Iserbyt, no Sweeck. That's 4 people who would normally be selected. They will have 7 or 8. No, they will have 8 or 9 places, because they have 7 quota places as leader of the nations ranking, and then they will have Toon Aerts, who's eligible, so that's 8, and then if Nijs wins the World Cup, they will have 9 riders, or Van Toerenhout for that matter. So if you're looking at that selection, it becomes quite interesting for those bottom places. A couple of riders will be in contention, like Wietse Meeuwse, Victor van der Putte, Gerben Kuipers, riders that wouldn't necessarily expect to race the World Championships based on how their season has been going, but definitely a few riders that will be handed an opportunity if Verstringen, and at this point it's still unconfirmed, does opt to skip the World Championships and kind of forego a opportunity at a medal, at the podium. And I mean, if you're already doing this now, then it's probably his last opportunity to get it, because his road campaign is only going to narrow, and it's only a matter of time before they put him on the same plan as Quinten Hermans at the Alpecin Premier Tech headquarters.
They clearly are kind of showing where the priority is, in a sense. I cannot really understand it. I'm trying to understand it, because in a sense you could say, yeah, Hulst, on a very good day he's going to be on the podium. If there are basically only 2 spots left, we don't know how that will play out. Could very well be that Nijs and Del Grosso will fight that out, and it could also be someone else, so we don't really know how that will go. But it is not a guarantee that he will be on the podium, but he was definitely one of the contenders for a podium, for sure, if you look at how his season has been going so far. I don't know. It could very well be that maybe because of things they picked up from last year, that they maybe are thinking that they should end the season a bit earlier, and maybe he still wanted to have a full season, and therefore they started the season as early as they did, and are going to end it, maybe because it is somewhat a rumor, it's not really confirmed yet. They're gonna end it at the Nationals, and I think for Belgium itself, it's a bit of a shame. It was discussed on the national broadcast there over in Belgium, so they are definitely also looking at it as an issue, and they should. Honestly, they should, and I think that is also the job in a sense of Angelo de Klerk, to try and get something going, try to keep Verstringen somewhat in the season in a sense, and not ending his season after the nationals. And I think that he could be a very valuable asset for the Belgium national team going into Hulst as the World Championship. So it's hard to judge. They must have had a reason why he started his season so early, and I honestly kind of think that it is mainly himself that he wanted to start his season that early, and the team probably they picked up something from last year and were like, well, maybe we should try and end the season maybe a bit earlier. And I agree with you, and that was kind of what I was saying as well when he was doing so well, and I was glazing him in a sense, that it's only going to get worse, and if they pick up on his climbing and his climbing actually comes more up front and he is able to have some very, very decent results, it's going to be very, very tough to keep him doing cyclocross the way he has been doing it so far. So it's somewhat, I guess, in a sense, finger crossed and hope for the best. It's going to be interesting to follow and to see, and it's also going to be interesting to see if that rumor is all true and if that is actually going to be happening, because it could very well be that he's going to be racing the next couple of weeks. It wouldn't surprise me in a sense if he would just be racing Benidorm and does the double weekend of World Cups and starts in Hulst.
The Belgian coach will probably be begging for that to happen. They will need the riders because, like I said, it will give a really good opportunity to other riders to race the World Championships that normally might not be considered or in contention at all, or even be counting on it. Riders that are even struggling to be selected for the World Champion or the World Cups because there's under 23s in this race. But it could be a really weird situation where, for the first time in years, the Belgians don't feel the strongest collective, but really the Dutch are going to outclass them with Van der Poel, Del Grosso, Nieuwenhuis, Ronhaar, Hendricks, Kamp, Van der Haar. I mean, that's a phenomenal team that the Dutch can field, especially with how Hendricks has been riding recently. One thing I noticed, and I'll do that as we go over the top 10, Van der Poel, Del Grosso, Verstringen the podium, Van der Putten 4th, Aerts 5th, Van Toerenhout 6th, Nieuwenhuis 7th, Orts 8th, Ronhaar 9th, and Hendricks 10th, is that we see a lot of these riders who were quite good in the November phase are kind of struggling now. Lars van der Haar is one of them. But there's more riders who were quite good in that Flamanville stretch. Michels has been sick, so it's a bit unfair to put him in that group. But Kamp, for instance, not as strong. Filippo Agostinacchio we saw fade a little bit as this phase of the season continued. Tom van der Bos. There's definitely a few riders that are feeling that, and it's just really this moment of the season where the fatigue is accumulated and everything comes in. But we're now also at this phase of a reset, so that's just the phase we're in, and I think I've said enough about that. And Ronhaar was just kind of the illustration for it. Like, he was a good yesterday, and he faded again a bit towards the end with back issues, but it is what it is for him. He had a few good outings, but also a couple of disastrous outings. Gavere, Dendermonde, horrendous races for him. And now he's coming back a bit. But we will need to see how everything progresses. Boros outside of the top 10, 12th, another good ride. Fontana, 13th, another good ride for him as well. So there are some riders who will take a lot of positives, others will take fewer positives, Issam. But yeah, I guess for me, maybe one rider here to still point out is Niels van der Putten. He raced a lot. He only skipped Baal. He's been quite good in all of the races. He's almost always finishing in the top 10, top 5 even. I think he missed the top 10 once, I say from the top of my head, in Gavere. And where was he also? And in Mol. In Mol he was, I saw him fade quite quickly in the snow there. So another good outing for him, Issam. And I mean, how do you look at his form at this point?
Looking back, maybe Mol was maybe strategic in the sense of super prestige, but I'm kind of in the what if scenario in the sense of what if he was going to plan his season like a normal human being in a sense, because what he has been doing with the amount of races, this is what the UCI wants to see in a sense, maybe, because this is what they want, right? They want to see the riders at all the races. Now, Van der Putten is really trying to follow that in a sense, but I think that you must hurt yourself in a way, and I'm not talking about physically, also physically, but in terms of results, maybe there were days where you potentially could have, small margins. If left or right, you could have maybe made use of a day where you took it a little bit easier. Look at, for example, Gulligem when his head finally got to a classification where he was thinking, "Hey, I'm actually going to throw away here a classification after the race in Diegem, where you had such an opportunity with Van Toornout almost throwing his entire classification away." He took the days off, and there he was. Mole was a day to forget for him. Don't know if it was deliberate or not, but I assume in a sense that maybe there was. I don't know. It's hard to judge. Maybe he would have done DNF'd, but anyways. But there in Gulligem, he was, he rode very smart, and I think he should look at that and be like, okay, maybe I have to take this little different. It's not only the fun, because he really enjoys it, but you also have to be smart. You're a professional. It's not only about your entertainment. It's also about the business side of it. And if you have that potential of winning races, and I think he has when the starting field is going his way in a way, and it's not with Mathieu van der Poel, then I feel that someone like Van der Putte must be up there, and he has shown it a couple of times this season. He has been very consistent in a sense. His season has been actually really up there. It was just kind of hard to give him that credit in a sense because there were not that many wins in it. But I felt that if he, you look at him in the last couple of races this Christmas period, and he redeemed himself in a way, but he should look back at this and be like, maybe I should plan it a little bit different. But who knows? Maybe he's gonna do the same thing, and maybe he does it even better than this year. But I just feel that it he must have let some good results slip out of his hands in a way because of the amount of race that he's done in this Christmas period.
I don't think that he's going to do anything any different. And he just loves the racing, and he seems to be able to handle the load quite well. I do agree with you that it would be interesting to see what happens if he does fewer races, but I don't think we'll ever get to see that unless Niels van der Putte just turns into another great road sprinter like, say, Timo Kielich, or takes that career trajectory, which at the moment doesn't seem too likely. So that was that, and Issam, a final question, and this one is totally unrelated, but I was watching Toon Aert, and I just got a flashback, like, for no apparent reason, but I don't remember what race it was, but I just remember very vividly this one scene a couple of years ago, like maybe 2018, 17, barriers in a World Cup, grassy course. They come around a fast right-hander onto the barriers, two guys of Telenet, and the first guy hops, crashes on the second, and then whoops his bike out of the way so his teammate doesn't go down, and then the third guy that's with them, not a teammate, does go down because of the spectacle unfolding in front of him. And I saw Toon Aert make one good save in the Kel, and I just thought, wow, that reminded me of that. I don't even remember sure if it was Toon Aert. I don't know if you have any idea what race that could be.
It is good that we are not that you're not using any video footage, because my face would have been priceless. I'm thinking about it, but I'm blank at this point. I can remember something, but it's I cannot really I cannot help you here. I'm sorry. Maybe you have to look. You have to search it up. I don't know. I have no idea. But it's in a sense that a lot of things that are happening, in this period, they have so much more value in a sense that they could very well play a huge role for and have huge implications for the nationals. We've seen, that crash with Van Aert that I think in any point of the season would have had huge implications, but it's now small things that could have kind of huge consequences, because if you're out for a week, you're done. you're simply done. Your nationals are done if that was your goal, and you have to try and find new goals in terms of world championships if you are able to get in form in time. But no, I cannot help you with that. I cannot recall it myself.
A little bit of desk research later, and we have concluded that it was Hoogheide 2018, Soete the one going down, Aert saving himself by braking, and then Soete pulling the bike away. Hoogheide 2018 World Cup. So we solved it. I don't remember why this came up in my head and why this is stored somewhere in the back of my brain, but it did, and I was thinking about this for 10 minutes. Where could it have been at the venue? Thought maybe it was that weird World Cup in Lignes-en-Berry 2016. I really couldn't remember, but now we've managed to solve it, and I think with that we're going to conclude this episode. Issam, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you for having me. Concluding the Christmas period as well. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. It was busy, but I think I got better off than you did. You were definitely the one that suffered the most out of this period. So my props and hats off to your efforts overall this Christmas period. And yeah, I hope the listeners enjoyed it. And we are not done yet because there is still a couple of weeks coming up until the real dip and depression of cyclocross is starting after the World Championships.
Hex yes, it's not over until Zweek's season is over, but Zweek is not there in February, so what are we going to do without him? We'll need a new emperor for February post-Worlds, sweeping up the races like Maldegem. Will be a different dynamic without him. It won't be the same, one could say, but no, definitely lots of racing to come up. It was 8 races. I counted them. 8 out of the 12. I was there. I also did the recon day of Zonhoven, recon day of Antwerp, and a training day in Lichtaert. So plenty of days on the ground observing cyclocross. It's what makes me happy. Issam is trying to drag me into another midweek episode to preview some national championships and do some other stuff. We will see if that actually happens. No promises. It might be time to take a break. There is a new edition of Inside Cyclocross that needs to be written. There are interviews that need to be worked out, but we should have some interesting points coming up, and be that this week or at the National Championships, always plenty of things to talk about. Again, thank you so much, Issam. It's been a good streak here throughout the Christmas period. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for the support. Catch you guys soon. Goodbye.